blissful life with love and gratitude to all. Today I am going to talk about ego. What is ego? How does it grow? What is the relation of happiness, misery, love, desire with ego? And few more points. So let me start. Ego is a deep desire to dominate that says, I am special, higher, bigger, greater than you. Ego is our false self, the person we become, so that other people will like us, admire us, and accept us. All our dreams are our ego projections. Also, just as when we peel an onion, all that we get are only the peels and nothing at the core. Similarly, we will not find any object called I. Eventually, what remains is the Atma, the Chaitanya, or the consciousness. Remember, ego is your enemy, not your friend. Now, let me go to the first point. Ego starts growing as the child grows. Ego exists in every human being. It is invariably present in everyone, be it young or old, rich or poor, educated or uneducated, and many more like this. But the degree in which they exist vary from person to person. Ego starts growing as the child grows. The parents, the school, colleges, university, they all help to strengthen the ego for the simple reason that for centuries man had to struggle to survive. And the idea has become a fixation, a deep unconscious conditioning that only strong egos can survive in the struggle of life. Life has become just a struggle to survive, and scientists have made it even more convincing with the theory of the survival of the fittest. So we help every child to become more and more strong in the ego, and it is there that the problem arises. As the ego becomes strong, it starts surrounding intelligence like a thick layer of darkness. Intelligence is light, ego is darkness. Intelligence is very delicate, ego is very hard. Intelligence is like a rose flower, ego is like a rock. And if you want to survive, the society says you have to become rock like, you have to become strong, so that you cannot be attacked from outside. But then you become closed. Then you start dying as far as your intelligence is concerned. Because intelligence needs the open sky, the wind, the air, the sun in order to grow, to expand, to flow, to remain alive. It needs a constant flow. If it becomes stagnant, it becomes slowly a dead phenomena. Ego is similar to the weeds in the field. Until the weeds are uprooted completely, we cannot cultivate a good crop. The weeds have to be uprooted regularly. Now let me go to the second point. Happiness is the death of the ego. Happiness is threatening and misery is safe for the ego. Ego can exist only in misery and through misery. Ego is an island surrounded by hell. Happiness is threatening to the ego, to the very existence of the ego. Happiness rises like a sun, and the ego disappears, evaporates like a dewdrop on the grass leaf. Happiness is the death of the ego. If you want to remain a separate entity from existence, as almost everybody is trying to do, you will be afraid of being blissful, cheerful. You feel guilty in being blissful. It almost always happens that people enjoy a few moments and then afterwards feel very guilty. The guilt arises because of the ego. The ego starts torturing them. What are you doing? Have you decided to kill me? And I am your only treasure. You will be destroyed. Killing me is destroying yourself. Continuing with the point, let us understand how misery nourishes your ego. Misery has many things to give you which happiness cannot give. On the contrary, happiness takes away many things from you, takes all that you have ever had, all that you have ever been, whereas misery nourishes your ego and happiness is basically a state of egolessness. That is the problem, the very crux of the problem. That's why people find it very difficult to be happy. That's why millions of people in the world have to live in misery, because it gives you a very, very crystallized ego. In misery, there is crystallization. In happiness, you become diffused. If this is understood, then things become very clear. Misery makes you special. Happiness is a universal phenomenon. There is nothing special about it. Now let me go to the next point. Love and ego cannot go together. Knowledge and ego go together perfectly well. But love and ego cannot go together. They cannot keep company. They are like darkness and light. Darkness can only be if light is not there. If love is not there, the ego can be. If love is there, the ego cannot be, and vice versa. If ego is dropped, love arises from all the directions. It simply starts pouring in you from everywhere. Remember, there are only two states of consciousness that exist: the state of ego and the state of love. The ego is the narrow state, the seed form, the atomic stage. Love is all encompassing. Love is God. The center of the ego is I. The ego exists for itself. The nectar of love is the universe. Love exists for all. The ego is exploitation. Love is service. And the service that flows from love freely and spontaneously is non-violence. Let me go to the next point. From where does the ego get its energy? The ego feeds off your desire to be something else. You are poor and you want to be rich. The ego is absorbing energy. Its life breath. You are ignorant and you want to become a wise one. The ego is absorbing energy. You are nobody and you want to become powerful. The ego is absorbing energy. Understand the process of the ego. How does the ego live? The ego lives in the tension between what you are and what you want to be. A wants to be B. The ego is created out of this very tension. How does the ego die? The ego dies by you accepting what you are. That you say, I am fine as I am. I will remain just as the existence keeps me. Its will is my will. When you have dropped all the tension about the future, that I should become this and I should become that, the ego evaporates. The ego lives on a base of the past and the future. Understand, the claims of the ego are of the past. I did this, I did that. It is all in the past. And the ego says, I will definitely accomplish this. I will definitely show you that I can accomplish that. This is all in the future. The ego simply does not exist in the present. If you come to the present, then the ego disappears. That is the death of the ego. My next point, you cannot drop the ego. I am is nothing but another name for the ego. Now you will be getting into trouble if the ego is convinced that the only way is to drop the ego. Then who is going to drop whom and how? It will be like pulling yourself up by your own shoestrings. You will look just silly. Watch each word that you use. I am is nothing but the ego. The second thing, nobody has ever been able to drop the ego because ego is not a reality that you can drop. Anything to be dropped at least has to be real, substantial. Ego is just a notion, an idea. You cannot drop it. You can only understand it. Can you drop your shadow? You can run as fast as you want, but your shadow will run exactly the same speed. You cannot drop the ego. Once you start trying to drop the ego, you will get in a very deep mess. You will become more and more worried and puzzled. And this is not the way to get rid of the ego. The only way to get rid of the ego is to look at it, witness it, and be aware of it. My last point, nature or the creation is always beautiful. Ego always ugly. So try to listen to the nature. So when you do something, watch, be alert. And if it leads to misery, then you know well that it was ego. Then the next time, be alert. Don't listen to that voice. If it is nature, it will lead you towards a blissful state of mind. Nature is always beautiful. Ego, ugly. There is no other way but trial and error. I cannot give you a criteria so that you can judge everything. No. Life is subtle and complex, and all criteria fall short. You will have to make your own efforts to judge. So, whenever you do something, listen to the voice from within. Make a note of it. Where does it lead? If it leads to misery, it is certainly from the ego. If your love leads to misery, it was from the ego. If your love leads to a beautiful benediction, a blessedness, it was from nature. If your friendship, even your meditation, leads you to misery, it was from the ego. If it were from nature, everything would fit in it. Everything would become harmonious. Nature is wonderful. Nature is beautiful. But you will have to work it out. Always make a note of what you are doing and where it leads. By and by, you will become aware of that which is ego and that which is nature, which is real and which is false. Yes, it will take time and alertness. And remember, don't deceive yourself because only ego leads to misery, nothing else. Don't throw the responsibility on the other. The other is irrelevant. Your ego leads to misery. Nobody else leads you into misery. Ego is the gate of hell, and the nature, the natural, the authentic, the real that comes from your center is the door to heaven. You will have to find it and work it out. So friends, I would like to stop for today. As it is a vast subject, I have tried to give some key points in the slides and the background video. Thank you for a valuable time given to this video. See you again with some new topic. Till then, take care of yourself and others near you and live a blissful life.